Mishcon Academy Digital Sessions.
Welcome everyone and thank you for joining this Mishcon Academy session. I'm Katy Colton, I'm the head of the Politics and Law Group here at Mishcon Deraya, and I'll be hosting today's event. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest for today, Jess Phillips MP. Jess was elected as the Labour MP for Birmingham Yardley in 2015. Before becoming an MP, she worked with victims of domestic violence, sexual violence and human trafficking, and she continues to speak up on behalf of those who struggle to have their voices heard. Reflecting this experience in 2020, Jess was appointed the Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding in the opposition front bench. Jess joins us today to discuss her book, which I've got a copy of here, Everything You Really Need to Know About Politics, My Life as an MP. The book is part autobiography and part rousing manifesto, I would say, seeking to lift the lid on the inner workings of Parliament and to encourage the reader that politics really is for everyone. It's very funny, and I think it also gives a real insight. It also gives a real insight into the role of an MP, not just as a legislator and political activist, but also the role of an MP as a constituency social worker, which I think often doesn't get enough attention. In the book, Jess also says that she wildly agrees to almost anything she's asked to do, and we're certainly grateful for that today.
It's an error in judgment, but...
So Jess, I wanted to start, obviously we've got a lot of things to talk about today, but I wanted to start by discussing the central theme of the book, which is encouraging greater engagement in politics. Why did you feel that now this case needs to be made?
I think that actually, more so than ever, I mean, on a positive note, more so than ever, people seem engaged in politics, well, certainly aware of it a lot more in the last sort of 5 years than maybe they were for some of the preceding years. And so there is a genuine interest, and certainly amongst young people there seems to be a peaking interest in cause-based politics. However, I think that even though there is an interest, there is still, that goes along with some of that rising enthusiasm for talking about politics, there is still this very cynical idea that the actual action of politics is in an ivory tower in Westminster, that you can't really change things, that everybody who's there is some sort of murky, sinister sort of actor who doesn't have anyone's best interests at heart. But the thing that I come across the most is, oh, what's the point, because nothing ever changes. Yeah. The idea that nothing ever changes has been put out there just like any other sort of bad faith line by establishments. It is done on purpose. It's not accidental. Apathy doesn't happen accidentally. It is genuinely the idea that you can't change things and you should just sort of be a number and just carry on and, oh, it's nothing to do with me. It benefits one group of people, and those are the people who already hold all the power if you opt out. Actually, if just like an elite group of people are interested in this and an elite group of people behave like it only belongs to them, then the same dreadful outcomes will continue to happen. And so I wanted to turn some of that sort of like anger and enthusiasm into actual active change, rather than just people being even crosser and thinking that we are even more sinister.
You were brought up on politics. It's
Yeah.
what you talked about every day. You
Yeah.
have that education, so you know about the issues and you have a strong view on what we can do and how we can get involved and the community behind politics.
Yeah.
But how do you engage people who don't have that education, who feel like nothing can change, and who are so disaffected that they wouldn't pick up your book?
Yeah, I mean, that is, the fundamental is that not without effort and hard work. Nothing happens without effort and hard work. I often say that, you know, like on the West Wing and on Scandal, you don't see anybody stuffing envelopes or knocking doors. But that is the vast reality of most political campaigns. And this is a real problem in election cycles, because people overpromise and seek to take people's power and act as if you need me to help you with this. I never, ever, ever seek to say, I'm going to solve your problems. Don't you worry, you leave it with me and we're going to sort this out. I engender people to do something with me. And so recently in my constituency, there's a young woman, she was sexually assaulted in one of the underpasses. It's largely disused. It's horrible and hardly anyone uses it. She came in, she said to me, this happened to me. Like, I just want the underpass closed. Can you do something about it? And so, yeah, you know, most members of Parliament say, OK, I'll write off to the council and I'll say this has happened, and we'll see what they say, which will be, sorry, we haven't got enough money to close this underpass. It's going to be on the next programme, blah, blah, blah. But I said to her, well, would you be interested in coming and doing a survey of the people who live on either side of this busy road, the A45, and ask them if they mind if it's, because I can't just unilaterally say in an area one thing's happened to one person, therefore it needs to be closed. That's not how politics works. So she was like, she's a 19-year-old girl, she'd never voted. We went out and surveyed people, we made videos, we held lobby, and she did it, not me. It's her. And she said to me, I can't believe someone like me could do this. And they've shut the underpass. Wow. So, like, you know, but it doesn't, I can make amazing speeches and I can inspire people and I can speak like a normal human being so ordinary people feel inspired to it. But that's not enough. It takes effort and work. Like anything takes effort and work to engage people in actually changing things. But once you've got them, you'll have them for life. She will never stop politically campaigning. Mm-hmm. And now when something bad happens, she'll be like, right, what can I do to change it? And that's what I was raised with. I was raised with, right, don't like it, do something about it.
In your chapter on what does an MP do all day, you account in great detail your average week, if you do have an average week. Mm-hmm. And I've got to be honest, by the time we'd got to Wednesday, I was absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, it is tiring.
Between Monday to Wednesday, you'd worked about a 40-hour week away from your family home. Votes on a Monday go past 10 p.m. And then you have the rest of your week in your constituency. And then this is on top of the fact that you calculate that for you even to stand as a candidate in 2015, it cost your family £40,000 in lost wages, money which your family didn't have. And I suppose that leads me to three questions which are linked. Is Parliament a welcoming environment for women with small children and those who can't afford expensive childcare? Does this matter? And if it does, what needs to change?
I mean, of course it does matter. It definitely does matter. Is it welcoming more so than it's ever been? To give it some credit, there is childcare available, but it's not perfect. It's not ideal. And the worst thing about it is, actually, it's got a geographical basis. So, you know, can you be a mother of young children? Pretty much anywhere in the country and still be elected? Yes, but it's not going to likely be as easy for you as it would be for a man. Can you be a single mom and be elected to Parliament if your children are little and you don't live in London, or basically London or Birmingham, essentially, or Manchester, like somewhere where it's a 2-hour train journey? The answer is no. I had to tell a woman from Cornwall, and she was like, I could do it, couldn't I? And I don't want to be disappointing to people, but I just had to say, well, you'd have to move your kid to London, and they'd have to travel with you, and so you could only really go back on the weekends then, rather than a Friday, because your kid would be in school in London, and then you'd have to do all of your constituency work Saturday, Sunday, so you're never getting a break at all, whereas I do mine Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I get a day off on Sunday. I just had to say, I'm sorry, it's just not, you're not going to be able to represent a seat in Cornwall and do what I do, which is get home late on a Wednesday night. It's not viable. So what needs to be done about it? I mean, that issue that I've just said, I have no idea what the solution to that be. Better transport links across the country that go that way?
Well, that kind of change happens very quickly.
Yeah, it's like HS2. Yes. When I finally get on that train, people are like, well, you only want it because you can get to work quick. I think, as if I'm still going to be elected and can actually get on that train. But yeah, so there is both an education piece with the public about, look, if you want it to be open and varied, then that is potentially going to have costs associated with it.
On the topic of women in politics, it's hard to avoid the question of the fact that the Labour Party has never had a female leader. Even the DUP and even UKIP briefly has had a female leader. I mean, for like 25 minutes, wasn't it? But everybody got to be the leader of UKIP for a spell, like the sugar babes. Yes. But does the Labour Party have a problem with women?
Every single political party has a varied and different problem with women, and the Labour Party no less. But look, it's a shameful fact that the Labour Party has never been led by a woman. without question. And the only reason I can come to is that being a Labour woman is a considerably more radical thing. It's considerably more anti-establishment in its broadest sense, because most of us, to be a Labour woman is to be a feminist activist, and is to completely and utterly think that the systems that currently rule over almost every one of our institutions essentially needs dismantling. But that one of those institutions is the Labour Party. So, they are an institution, an old-fashioned institution, just like every other institution. And so it's quite it would be, a Labour woman Prime Minister would be a radical thing.
So moving on to a slightly different topic of the rule of law, we've seen in...
It doesn't exist anymore.
Well, that's going to be the question. We've seen the Internal Markets Bill, which broke international law in a specific and limited way. We've seen the attempt to rewrite standards policies after the Owen Paterson scandal. Partygate, obviously, is a big one. And we're very energised about the attempts to water down judicial review process.
That's first day back, isn't it? Or the second day back after the recess is the... Yeah. But if you've got enough people in the Lords, they're on a tight timescale, because the Parliament finishes. So the bill will fall if it doesn't get through.
Yes, well, they've already watered down quite a lot of amendments.
Yeah. The Lords really have all the power at the moment. I mean, not that I agree with it, obviously.
But moving on, we've seen lots of those examples. Do you believe that this current government believes in the rule of law?
No. They give me no evidence that they believe in the rule of law. And going back to Margaret Thatcher, I didn't like the woman. It's like
That's a surprise.
George W. Bush was totally rehabilitated by Trump.
Yeah.
We were all then they made all those documentaries, and I think, he had a point. I like that. What was I thinking? He seems quite a sensible man. Margaret Thatcher has been totally rehabilitated by Boris Johnson. You would give your right arm at the moment. She respected the rule of law. If we don't have that, if we don't have a basic principle and there are no consequences for breaking a basic principle, then you're a hop, step and a jump away from very, very dangerous regime, in my view. The people owning things is my whole shtick. I want people to feel like they own things. And actually, the law, beyond criminal law, which I do think that the general public do feel, that's why Partygate has been interesting, because they feel affronted by one rule for you, one rule for another. They definitely feel affronted by that. But the sort of lack of understanding of what the law does and the importance of holding boundaries is not something that's taught particularly well in school.
No, and I think you see the lack of education, particularly, we've seen it in relation to the Human Rights Act, and that being used to say, well, we can't deport criminals, and stripping out the entire facts of these cases.
Oh, 100%. I see it all the time. I mean, the famous case is the cat case that Theresa May highlighted, where she said somebody had got to stay because they had a cat. I mean, there's no bit of the law. It's like bendy bananas. There was nothing that said the bananas couldn't bend. There is nothing that would have allowed that man to stay because of his cat. However, so it's just not true. So that is one thing. But yeah, people will totally misrepresent the law all the time. And it's very, very pernicious, because in politics, it's very easy. Divide and conquer is the quickest route to power, without question. And so to make somebody hate somebody from over here without understanding the details of their lives or their case or what's going on, I have to spend my entire life trying to do the exact opposite. So you knock on someone's door and they'll say, well, I go to work every day, but her next door, she's got a couple of kids and she's just bought a new Range Rover and she doesn't even go to work. If only I could afford a new Range Rover. And I just think, you know nothing about the woman who lives next door. You've made a series of assumptions based on your own life experience. You've prosecuted a case against this woman because somebody else has made you feel like the reason that you're not getting the things you want is because she's getting them, rather than looking to the power in our country of how things get done and given out. It's so easy in politics to make people hate somebody else. And the talk about the Human Rights Act is absolutely 101, that game being played. It is just simply, divide, conquer, make out like somebody's getting something you'd never be entitled to. Like, when every migrant arrives on a boat, they get given like a DVD player, and like all of that rubbish is just entirely to do that.
Thank you so much. It's been really interesting and entertaining, and I would highly recommend the book. And we've got copies outside, but thank you so much for coming in today.
No worries, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The Mishcon Academy Digital Sessions. To access advice for businesses that is regularly updated, please visit mishcon.com.